I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator Joe Manchin broke down the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act on the Senate floor Thursday. The bill laid out proposals like enhanced background checks for gun buyers under 21, federal grants to incentivize states to pass red flag laws, and the closure of the boyfriend loophole to keep guns out of the hands of domestic abusers. Listen in for the West Virginia Democrats' full explanation.
Senator from West Virginia is recognized.
Are we in a quorum call?
We are.
Asked to officiate the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I rise today to acknowledge the years of bipartisan hard work on one of the most challenging subjects we have here, which is gun violence, mental illness, all the things that basically contribute to these horrible, horrible tragedies. And something has to be done, and something has been done. There's going to be people that look at the piece of legislation that we're about to pass in a bipartisan way and say it's not enough. I can understand that. There are going to be other people saying that it's too much. It's the camel's nose under the tent. And they want to take my guns away. I can understand their concern because people have scared them, but it's a constitutional amendment. That's not going to happen. So what I want to reaffirm is myself, coming from a little town, Farmington, West Virginia, being raised in a gun culture, growing up in a gun culture. My father was not a sportsman. He was not a gun person. But I was part, he wanted to make sure that I had access to people who knew how and lived in this culture that knew how to teach me properly. So, growing up, they had what they called the Farmington Sportsman's Club. And these were a lot of the men who worked in the mines that kind of took us under his wing, all us young kids. They taught us gun safety. They called it gun sense. We're going to teach you some gun sense, Joe. I said, okay. And I understood it, gun sense. It's a sensible thing you do with a gun. It's a law-abiding thing law-abiding gun owners do. And the first thing they teach is the safety of how to handle the gun. It's never loaded. It's always broken down before you go into the woods, before you prepare to hunt, or if you're going to shooting, whatever you're going to do. They teach us about that. They teach us everything that they possibly can, and then they explain to us why they're teaching us. They said, first of all, the most important thing you know, that when you acquire a weapon, and it is a weapon, it's basically to feed your family, to defend your family, and basically the sporting of skeet shooting or target shooting. And I says, I got it. I understand it. And they said, do you understand this? And I said, what? You never sell your gun to a stranger. Never, ever, ever. If you don't know the person, that is not someone you want to sell to until you know exactly who they are and what their intent may be. Fine. So that's part of my gun culture. You never sell your gun to a stranger. He says, you never loan your gun even to a family member that's not responsible. If you deem them to be not a responsible person and you have not trusted them by giving them your car or doing anything with them, with any valuables you had, why would you loan them your gun? It's a dangerous, they don't know how to do it. They won't basically take care of it and honor it and understand the gun culture that you do. These are things I learned very young. I'm going to fast forward to Sandy Hook. Never in my mind, never in my imagination, never in the United States of America could I believe that 20 babies would get slaughtered, that we have become so mentally disturbed that someone could feel that that was something that they needed to do or something drove them to it. I couldn't comprehend that. But what even was harder than that is once I got to know all the families, knowing that most of the children was hard to identify or had to use DNA to identify them, told me everything. So I was on the floor of the Senate one time in 2013, and people were talking about we got to do something. And every time there's a horrific tragedy, we are all willing to start talking about we got to do something. Mr. President, during that time I was here and we were talking, and a person says we got to ban this and ban that and take this off the streets and take this. I heard all those things. And I confronted one of our senators at that time about the types of guns. They didn't come from a gun culture. We're all raised a little differently. They never had the opportunity to learn as I did. And I said, I think what you're doing is taking a position right now by me being a law-abiding gun owner and I own guns, that I'm going to do something criminally with them or abuse them. I'm not. You got to give me that certain amount of concern that I am a law-abiding gun owner, the same as you buy, whether you buy a car, whatever you buy that may do danger to yourself or others in public, you have that right because it's a law-abiding citizen and that's a product that's being sold. I understand all that. And they said, well, Joe, if you know so much, why don't you write a bill? And I said, well, the thing I see where the loopholes are, I just told you, as a law-abiding gun owners, you can't infringe on me by saying I can't give it to my child or my grandson, or I can't give it to my brother or my cousin in my family, immediate family. You have to give me that ability to make those decisions as a law-abiding gun owner with common gun sense. But I said, what you do is you have a problem at a gun show. You can go to a gun show anywhere. They're all over the country. And there'll be somebody in that gun show selling guns that doesn't do a background check because they're not a licensed dealer. It's the way the system's set up. And I said, that's not right. That person is either not a law-abiding gun owner or doesn't understand guns well enough of how we were trained. So that should be a loophole that be stopped. Then we talked about, well, how about on the internet now? We have all this transactions on the internet anymore. So with the transactions that's happening on the internet, the way the law is set up today, if I buy from you in Maryland or you buy from me, then I've got to send my gun to a dealer, a licensed firearm dealer in Maryland before you, Mr. President, you can go pick it up and they'll do a background check on you. But if I sell my gun to somebody in my state of West Virginia, whether you're down in Bluefield, West Virginia, or in Wheeling, West Virginia, I can do that without going through any gun dealer. A licensed dealer do a background check. That should be stopped. So basically, we did a bill, and I got Senator Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, and that was a Manchin-Toomey bill we did back in 2013. It's probably been vetted longer than anyone else and any piece of legislation as far as in guns. And I would have dearly loved to have a common sense background check bill that did not infringe on law-abiding gun owners' rights and protected their Second Amendment. And we weren't able to get that in. But you know what? I understand. I'm okay. I would have loved to. But we got some other things in. So what I'm trying to point out, those of you who didn't think you got what you wanted, trust me, we need to start somewhere. This is a start. Thinking that the only thing I had advice to the committee we worked on, the bipartisan group, was this: whatever we do, you've got to make sure that we're able to say what we're doing today would have prevented this horrible Uvalde tragedy. And again, we had young kids, babies, if you will, innocent, that their lives were taken away from them and their families. Something has to be done. It's not open season on children. So if we do anything, it has to be towards the safety of children and the school system. If you can't, as a parent or a grandparent, see your child off to school knowing full well they're going to return home safe, or if you have that doubt in your mind, and if that child has their doubt and they're scared to go to school, something's wrong with our system in America. And we're asking for just basically for good, decent people to step up. This is a piece of legislation that will do an awful lot of good. And it's something that we can build off of. And I think that's our purpose. Support of state crisis intervention orders. We're putting $750 million that'll be available for states to create and administer laws that help keep weapons out of the hands of those determined by court with strong due process. Now, they've been talking about what kind of a flag it is, what kind of a law. Forget about that. What we're saying is when we identify, and let me tell you something, the people that can do more good and help us more are the students that are going to school and have befriended in a group of friends, and all of a sudden the student goes dark. Something happens. They take you off of their social media page. They don't want to interact with you anymore. They got another group of friends. Something's wrong. But if you had a mental professional, a mental hygiene professional in that school system that you could go to as a student and says, I have a friend I'm concerned about, and then it's in the proper hands, we haven't had that. This gives us that chance. This gives us that chance to do it. Protection of victims of domestic violence. We know it far too many times. And to tell you how rampant this is and the culture that we have, there's domestic violence shelters almost in every corner of the country. Wherever you live in America, you can find a domestic violence shelter. We're that committed to protecting, people that are going through abuse. this basically closes the boyfriend loophole, which is something that's needed to be done for quite a while. And I think that it's going to save lives. I really do. Enhanced background check for people under 21. Myself, I was very open. I think it should have gone to 21. It makes all the sense in the world. I use this rationale. If you're less than 21 years of age and over the age of 18, you cannot go to a gun store legally and buy a handgun. It's the law. Not once have we ever had a strong position to where people are saying, oh, you've got to have 18-year-olds go buy handguns. Trying to retract that. We haven't, because it makes sense. But for some reason, we never on the long guns, and I'm going to tell you why. Rite of passage, my first long gun, single shot, 22. It's considered long. It's one single shot, bolt action, 22. My next gun was a 410 shotgun to go squirrel hunting. Then I jumped over 16 gauge to 12 gauge because I want to be big time. I want to show them I could shoot a 12 gauge and take the kick. So that's where that's the reason. So at 18, you know, you're out there, and they told me this. They said, well, wait a minute. 18-year-olds can go into the military, and they're going to be taught all these weapons. I said, let me make sure you understand. They're going to be properly trained, and they're not going to leave base with them. They're properly trained, and those weapons that you're talking about are used only for the military and defense of our country and does not leave base without them unless they're on duty. There's a difference in what you want to do. So we open it up, and here we come, this new product comes onto the market. And this product comes onto the market with a vengeance. And you know, only thing I have said, and I've been very public about it, I don't own one, but I have friends and family members that do. And I trust they'll do the right thing. They enjoy them for whatever reason. So I haven't gone down that path, but the bottom line is we have got to take a position that we are going to protect our children. And this is what it's about. It's a child protection bill as far as I'm concerned. And if you can't protect the children in America, if you can't protect the children in your neighborhood, in your school system, they go to school, the same school that your children and grandchildren, then God help us all. And if that's not at the front of every discussion on a PTO meeting today going on around the country, and every school board going on around the country, something's wrong. How hardened is your school? How well is our children protected? You know, if I'm a parent or grandparent, that's what I'm asking. I have 3 young grandchildren in that age exactly in the school system very close to where this happened. And you can imagine where my heart was when I heard of this horrible tragedy. So I can only imagine. My heart and prayers go out to these family members. We'll never bring back the children. I'm still very close to the Sandy Hook parents and that movement that made people more aware. It's taken us a long time, but we're going in the right direction. I see my good friend, Senator Cornyn, who's worked so hard on this. This is something that's long overdue, long overdue. So what we're going to do, if you're 18 to 21, we want to make sure that we know what your juvenile record is. If there's a juvenile record, we're going to find it. And we're going to see if you're worthy or not to have this type of gun. And that's going to be a 3 to 10 day process for us to get the records back through the different systems to make sure that we've evaluated them properly and to review the juvenile and mental records, which are so important. Because I can assure you, a young person who maybe didn't have the family support they needed or the nurturing that was needed, and they have been in the juvenile system for violence or behavior problems, is going to be someone that more than likely is going to have a problem as they grow older, unless they can get help. Maybe now we can identify and get that person help so they don't harm themselves or anyone else in society. That's the purpose of what we're doing. And then you have the investment in mental health funding. $11 billion that we're investing in mental health. That's serious. For the first time, for us to put this type of money, of public money, towards something that is a public tragedy that we're dealing with, I think the money is going in the right place. So when we said we want to be able to prevent, this bill should be able to prevent someone who shouldn't have a gun in that age group, and it gives us a little extra eyes and time to look into it, we've done it. To saying that we basically are going to be able to identify this person and maybe help that person save themselves and a whole lot of other innocent people. We've done it. We've started in the right direction. There's a lot more we can do. So for all of you that are out there saying you didn't do enough, it's just not good enough. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This is a good piece of legislation, and it has bipartisan support, and I'm so proud of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. It's time to move forward. We will be voting very shortly on that sometime today. It'll be a historical vote, a very historic vote. And I'm proud that the colleagues are standing tall on this. We have 50 Democrats and 15 Republicans, and that's a major accomplishment in today's atmosphere, if I may. So I'm proud to be a senator that's going to take part in a historic piece of legislation to maybe correct a lot of the fears that people have right now of sending their children or grandchildren to school, of maybe relieving the fears of children who are saying, I'm afraid to go to school today. That is something I've never heard growing up. It's something I couldn't imagine in the United States of America. I don't want my children or grandchildren and their children having to live through this. It's time for us to stop it. This is a right start. It's a right piece of legislation. It's a good piece of legislation. And this is one time we've put our money where our mouth is in the mental illness that goes on around this country to make sure that we're taking care of a problem that's been festering for a long time. So with that, I want to thank my colleague, Senator Cornyn from Texas. I want to thank all of the group, if you will. We were 20 plus strong, equally divided, Democrats and Republicans working for the right thought, the right cause, and the purpose for us being here, making sure we do something good for America and protect our children. We've done that in this bill. And with that, I say thank you to all my friends, all my colleagues for the job and a job well done. And with that, I see my friends here, and I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.